Okay, good Tavach everyone, and welcome. We are sponsored in our learning of this Masechta by A.B. Spry. We're sponsored by Baruchim Nishmas Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba Esther Bas Yona, Avram Ben Shulak Koyen, L'Refu Shalema Faliba Bas Anya. We're sponsored by Shalom Fogel, Nishmas Yaakov Zeb Ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Sivya Miriam Bas God, Yosef Ben Sion Ben Yaakov Zev, and for a great shidduch for Chaya Tivya Bas Shoshana Gittel. We're sponsored for the spiritual, physical, and emotional protection of Yeshua Menachem Mendel Ben Beila Shendel Rif. We're sponsored by Berish Kesseman for Shoshana Bas Adina, for Shalem B'Sei Sheikhel Yisrael. And we're sponsored by Mark Frankel, whose father's yahrzeit is tonight, and the Ilui Nishmas, Yisrael Tzvi Ben Chaim Yeshua Falek. We're sponsored by Barry Cement for Zayda's yahrzeit, Mordechai Zelig Ben Moshe Hillel, and by David Helfgat for Chaya Rachel, Bas Rebel Yo, Aryeh Leib. Then our neshama should have an aliyah. We are holding on the top of Daf Yutes Amud Aleph. The Gemara tells us the first line, Amar Rav Ashi, Amar li Huna bar Nasan.
Tell Azriel I'm on Daf. Yeah. Oh, I didn't mute.
Amar li Huna bar Nasan. It was related to me by Huna bar Nasan. Zimna Chada, one time Avakimna Kamei is Gadar Malka. I was standing by a Goyish king, Iskadar Malka. He was a knowledgeable fellow. Vavamidlali Hamainei. And he wasn't a Kohen, but his belt was higher above the elbows. The sash was above the elbows in a place of sweat. V'chayte nihale, and he pulled it down to make it equidistant to the elbows. V'amali, and he told me, Mamleches Kehanim v'Goy Kodesh Ksibuchu. It says about you that you're a kingdom of priests. So you all have to be like priests and not wear the belt in a place of sweat. Ki asa kamei da'ameimer, when I came before Ameimer, Amalei, he said, Ikayim b'cha, it was fulfilled by you, the pasuk, V'hoya malachim omnaich. The kings will raise you. Because the king gave him advice, good advice. And as we welcome in now, I think Mark is coming in. We welcome in Mark. We did learn for your father's yahrzeit. Welcome, Mark. We're holding on Daf Yutes Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the Tanakh. Tanan Hasam, Koyin Shiloka Be'etzbaro. He cut his finger. He wants to put on a reed. A reed was the Talmudic band-aid. So Kayrich Aleh Gemi B'Mikdash, he could put on a reed in the temple on Shabbos. Because even though it's for refuah, and refuah usually we decree because of gzeirah, it might come to grind the herbs for medicine, but there's no shvus in the mikdash, there's no drabanan in the mikdash, so you could do it in the mikdash, but not avaloi b'medina, but not outside of the mikdash because it's in its drabanan. But if it's to express blood, that's already an issa deraisa of chayvel, then kan v'kan asa, then it's forbidden even in the mikdash.
Why would he express blood?
Well, sometimes it was too painful. Getting out the blood, it's like getting out pus. Amrav Yehuda Breid Rav Chia, lo yishanu el gemi. You could only put on like a reed. Aval tziltzil cotton, but to put on a small little belt around the finger, that's not good because that's considered a beged, and you can't put on an extra beged. You're only allowed to have 4 begadim. Have a yita begadim. Rabbi Yochanan says even the tziltzil cotton is not a problem. Why? Because lo yamru yita begadim, the only time they said it's a problem of an extra beged, that's only ela b'makom begadim. That's only in the place where you normally wear begadim. But on the finger where you don't normally wear begadim, it's not a problem. Ela says the Gemara lo yamru yita begadim ela b'makom begadim. Aval shalai b'mekayim begadim, but in a place where you don't really usually wear clothing, lo yav yita, that's not a problem. But wait a second, even if it's not a problem of an extra beged, but if he's doing the avodah, you can't have something interposed between his finger and the avodah. V'teifiklei mishum chatzitza. Says, no, it's talking about Bismil, where it was on his left hand. You don't do the avodah with your left hand. You do the avodah with your right hand. Inami shaloi b'mekayim avodah. It wasn't on it was on the back of the finger, which doesn't touch the keli, so it's not a chatzitza. Or pliga de Rava, but this is in opposition to Rava. The Amar Rava Amrav Chisda b'mekayim begadim. If it's in a place of a beged, there afilu nima achas chaytzetzes. Even one hair is a chatzitza. Even one hair is a chatzitza. Shaloi b'mekayim begadim. If it's not in a place of a beged, shalosh al shalosh chaytzetzes. A patch 3 by 3 finger breadths is a chatzitza. Pachas mekan, less than that. In other words, when he say chaytzetzes, it means it's an extra beged. Rashi says kalaymar. When Rashi says kalaymar, it means that it's not the simple. Chaytzetzes usually means that it interposes. But here it means that if it's a patch 3 by 3 finger breadths, that constitutes a chashuv thing, and it's a problem of yita begadim. Pachas mekan, less than 3 by 3 finger breadths, einon chaytzetzes. So the Gemara says, Ad Rabbi Yochanan vadei pliga. It definitely argues on Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan says that in a place where you don't wear begadim, it's not a chatzitz at all. Says Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda B'rei Rabbi Chia mi lema de pliga. Does it argue on Rabbi Yehuda B'rei Rabbi Chia? Rabbi Yehuda B'rei Rabbi Chia says a tziltzil cotton. Now a tziltzil cotton is less than 3 by 3 finger breadths. So does he argue on Rabbi Yehuda B'rei Rabbi Chia? Says Gemara, no. If it's a small belt, that's already chashuv, and there it's even if it's less than 3 by 3. 3 by 3 is only if it's just a piece of fabric. Shani tziltzil cotton, a small belt, is going to be a problem even if it's less than 3 by 3, the chashuv, because it has an identity. Lishnachrina imrela, there's another version. Let's see it inside. Lishnachrina imrela is another version. I'm Rabbi Yehuda B'rei Rabbi Chia. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, says, Lo yishanu ela gemi. It's only you're allowed to put on a reed. Aval tziltzil cotton, but if it's a small belt, that's a problem of an extra beged. Rabbi Yochanan amar lo yamru chatzitza b'pachas mishal shal shalosh. There's no chatzitza with less than 3 by 3 finger breadths. That's only ela b'makom begadim. That's only where you normally wear begadim. Aval shalai b'mekayim begadim, but where you don't wear begadim, there shalosh chaytzitzes. So again, let's see. Rabbi Yochanan amar lo amru chatzitza b'pachas mishal shal shalosh. You don't have a chatzitza where it's less than 3 by 3. That's only ela b'mekayim begadim, where you usually wear clothing. Aval shalai b'mekayim begadim. Shalosh al shalosh chaytzitzes, 3 by 3 is a chatzitza. Pachas mekan ein a chaytzitzes. V'hainu de Rav Amar Rav Chisda. That's the opinion of Rav in the name of Rav Chisda, who gives a share of 3 by 3. But does he argue on a tziltzil cotton? Lema pligi ad Rabbi Yehuda B'rei Rabbi Chia, because he says even a tziltzil cotton is a chatzitza. Says, no, shani tziltzil cotton, the chashiv, 3 by 3 finger breadths, that's chashiv, and that will be chaytzis even if it's less than 3 by 3 finger breadths. Says the Gemara, ul Rabbi Yochanan, my yagemi, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that he holds in the first version that a tziltzil cotton is not mafsik, because he holds yita begadim is only in the place of begadim. So why does it say that you're allowed to put on a gemi? Should say even a bigger chiddush that you're allowed to put on a tziltzil cotton, or Rabbi Yochanan Meir gemi lishminon tziltzil cotton, that you're even allowed to put on a small belt. Says the Gemara, no, it wants to teach us something incidentally, that you should know that a gemi is therapeutic for a cut. Milsa agav urcha kamashmon the gemi masi, that a reed has a therapeutic effect. Now the Gemara asks a volley of questions which it's not going to answer. We need a volunteer kohen over here. Oh, okay, Mark. So boy Rava, nichnas aloi ruach bebigdai mao. Let's say he's wearing his tunic, and a big wind blows under the tunic and lifts it off his chest. Is that considered, when he does the avodah, is that considered to disqualify the avodah because it's not al basarai? It's not on his flesh. Al basarai ba'inan v'aleka, because the wind blew it from his chest. Or since that's normal, you go out, sometimes the wind gets between you and your clothing and blows it. That's a normal way of wearing it, and it's not a problem. That's the first question. Next question. This happens to Mark all the time. Kina mao shetochitz. If he has a lice under his clothing, is that going to be a chatzitza? So the Gemara says, Mesa loy tibaylach. If it's a dead louse, that's definitely a chatzitza. Devadei chayitza. Chayamai. What if it's a living organism? Now, in those days, they had a lot of lice. You know, in Eretz Yisrael, they say that a lot of times the children have lice in their hair. I shouldn't say anything negative about Eretz Yisrael, but they don't take it as seriously as they take it over here. You know, the hair over here, when they hear the word lice, they call the fire department and the Coast Guard, and but anyway, so the question is, what if the louse is alive? Mi amrina kaven the asava azla. It crawls on his body. It's like the body has very tiny organisms, so it's like a part of his body. Revisi, it's part of the growth of his body. V'loy chaytza. Oidilma kaven the kapet Allah, since he doesn't want it there. Chaytza, it is a chatzitza. Offer ma'oshiyachitz. What if he has some dirt? Says Gemara, offer vadikayitz. Dirt is a chatzitza. Ela avak offer ma'o. What if there's some dust? Says the Gemara, is he makbid on dust? Beis hashechi ma'oshiyachitz. Let's say around the armpit, Mark's tunic is wide, and there's a space over there. It doesn't hug the armpit. What's the din? Al b'sarai ba'inan. Does it have to be on its flesh? V'oleka. That it shouldn't be so tight over there. I told you, it's very, very funny that the Gemara declares all these shilas. The Gemara doesn't answer them. What if, Mark, he's doing the avodah, and he puts his left hand inside by his bosom, and his left hand actually is chaytzitz between his chest and the garment. Gufay micha. I don't know. People are not muting themselves. Says the Gemara. Oh, we have to help people out. Gufo michayitz, oiloichayitz. Is his own body a chatzitza or not? Nima mao shetochitz. What about a thread? Says nima vaday chaytza. A thread is definitely a chatzitza. Elanima miduldelis mao. What about if it's a thread that's still attached to the garment? It's a hanging thread. Again, the Gemara has an answer to these questions. Boy mar baravashi yotza soroi bebigdoi mao. The kohen has long hair, and it hangs down into his clothing. Do we say saroi kegufay dami or lav kegufay dami? Is his hair like his body, and it's not chaytzis, or is it not like his body? Now, boy Rebbe Zeira tefillin ma'u sheyachutzu. If you're wearing tefillin, is that a yiter beged? Is that an extra beged, and therefore it's a problem? So on this, the Gemara says, "Aliba demandiyama laila lavs man tefillinu." According to the mandiyama, that night is not a time for tefillin. So therefore, in the night, it's definitely something extra. Like Tebayla. That's definitely not a shayla. Kevin the Laila chaytze, since it would be chaytz in the night, yoim nami chaytze. It's chaytz in the day too. However, ki Tebayla, the question is, Lamanda Amar, according to the Mandiyama Laila, Zman Tefillin. My. Do we say mitzvah de gufei chayitz, an independent mitzvah of the body is a chatzitza? It's something extraneous, and it's a chatzitza. Or maybe a loichayitz. So this matter, igalgel milsa, the matter rolled around, or matal lekami de Rabami, and it came before Rabami. Amalei Talmud Arachu biyadenu. This is already a lengthy teaching that we have by us, and already a established teaching that tefillin chaytzitzis. That tefillin is something extra, and it's a problem. It becomes a fifth beged. Says Gemara Meisvei. It says Kahanim b'avodasim, Kahanim doing the avodah, Uleviim b'duchon, and the Leviim on the platform singing. Ve'Yisrael b'mamodan, and the Yisrael that act as representatives for the carbon tamid and say the mamodos, and they're like a representative Klal Yisrael as one of the bailim that stands by the carbon. P'turin minat tefillah u'minat tefillin. They're exempt from tefillah and from tefillin. Now the implication is they're exempt, but if they wear it, it's okay. My lavi im hanichon einon chaytzis. Says the Gemara, lo im hanichon chaytzis. If they wear it, it's a problem. So then it shouldn't say p'turin, it should say asurin. Iyachi p'turin asurim ibayla. It should say it's forbidden. Says the Gemara, well, for them it would be forbidden. But since it has to say a Levi and Yisrael, and by Levi Yisrael, it's not a question of being forbidden. It's their potter when they're involved in their other activities. Therefore, the Leimasna Le'aser, it can't say by Yisrael and the Levi Aser. So Mishamachi Tana P'turin, even by the Kayin. But talk about the Kayin, it's Aser because it's Chatzitza. It says, but wait a second. V'atanyim hanichon einon chaytzitzas. We said that if the Kayin wears tefillin, it's not a Chatzitza. Says Gemara, it depends if you're talking about the tefillin shel yad or the tefillin shel rosh. The tefillin shel yad is a problem because it gets in the way of the beged. Tefillin shel rosh is not a problem. Like kasha or the yad or the rosh. So the Gemara says, Maishna the yad, d'chsiv yilbash al b'sarai, you have to wear it on your flesh, and therefore it interposes between the beged and the flesh. That means it's not a problem of a yiter beged. It's a problem of a chatzitza. So the Reish Nami, it's going to get in the way of the hat. The Reish Nami ksiv is sometimes it's nefes al Reisha. The hat has to be on his head. Says, well, that's no problem. Because the Kohen Gadol who wears the tzitz, the foreplate on his forehead, and then he wears the mitznefes, there's a place in between that you could fit the tefillin. Tana Sarah Yanira, the hair of the Kohen Gadol was seen bein tzitzl mitznefes, between the foreplate that says Kodesh Lashem on his forehead and the hat, shesham manichon tefillin. But you see that it's only a problem of chatzitza, it's not a problem of a yiter beged. Now that we're a little bit on the way, we could already be a menschlich and welcome in Shimon Klein and Mo Kushner and Saba and Yaakov Warman and Yitz Fuchs and Dr. Guy. Yisrael Fisher, Menachem Umansky, Nachman Chapler, who is there? Oh, Irving Fishbaum. Mazel tov to Irving Fishbaum on the Bar Mitzvah. Rabbi Kranz, Mel Zachter, Dr. Block, Shelley Zeitlin, Barry Cement, Yitzi Muller. Oh, Daf 2009 and 2100. Wow. We're doing tonight Daf 2100. That means that we have 611 blot to finish Shas. You hear that, Herschel? 611 blot.
A little blind by 1,000.
No, 2,000 between me and you. What is it? But anyway, and we welcome in Mark Franco, Michal Avram Chavin, Dr. Eisenberg, Moshe Lehman, Elio Yaffe, Stephen Holtzman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Richard Rosenzweig, Ilya Schutman, Danny Vogel, Naftali Jablin, and David Helfgott. Here in the shul, we have Berish Gesselman, we have Herschel Wallner, and we have Ruvain Shanet holding down the fort over here. I made a bracha, or did I? Did I?
I didn't hear it.
No. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro. I just want to tell the Olam that there's a little bit of a special program this evening. It's Mark's father's yahrzeit tonight, so after the two blot, before the Mishnah Yomis, we're going to have a short shir called A Burst of Inspiration for between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. So there'll be a short shir about between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and then we'll do the Mishnah Yomis. And also, Rabbi Isai, it seems to be that as fate would have it, our only option is to do two blot tomorrow, because otherwise we'll have to do three blot Matzah Yom Tov, which nobody wants to do. So Mirza Hashem, tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, we will do two blot. Wish me luck. Now, Mechus and Kippurim. We know that if one who did not yet bring his carbon, he went to the mikveh on the seventh day, he had setting of the sun, but he didn't bring the carbon the next day. If he does the avodah, he disqualifies the avodah. Minala, how do we know this? When the kain brings the carbon, then v'tahera, then he will be tar. Tahera, michlal sheet meya, until the carbon body is tab, and therefore, of course, he can't do the avodah. If he didn't sanctify his hands and his feet in the kiyur, he disqualifies the avodah. That we learn out. From somebody that's missing his four vestments, one of the four vestments, and just like one who is missing one of his four vestments disqualifies the avodah. So also one who did not do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. Tan Rabbana. Now we know, we just had Yom Kippur, we know each time the Kohen Gadol changed from the golden garments to the white garments, or from the white garments to the golden garments, he had to do two Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim and one Tefillah. With a total, during the day, it's the regular stuff that he did daily, that was done with his golden 8 vestments. The special Yom Kippur ritual was done with the white vestments. And when he changed from one to the other, he did twice Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim and once Tefillah. So now it says the Gemara, Ton Rabbanan, Kohen Gadol shaloi toval v'shaloi kidesh bein beged lebeged. A Kohen Gadol that didn't do the Tefillah or the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim between changing from the gold to the white or white to the gold, or bein avodah l'avodah, from doing one avodah to another avodah, v'avad avidasai, and he did the avodah without the requisite tefillah and kiddushay yadayim raglayim, ksheira. The echad kohen gadol, the echad kohen gadol hedyot. However, whether a kohen gadol or a kohen hedyot, shaloi kiddush yadav raglav shachris, who didn't do the kiddush yadayim raglayim from the kier in the morning, the oven and did the avodah, avodah psula, the avodah is possible. So the Gemara wants to know why the 5 and the 10 are not ma'akiv. Amalei Ravasi the Rabbi Yochanan michtei chomesh tfilas. The 5 tfilas of Asari Kiddushin and the 5 times Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim Doraisa, they're biblical. The Chuka Ksibahu, and it says Chuka. Now remember, I told you that there's certain code words wherever it says Kacha, or wherever it says Chuka, or wherever it says Tiyah, it has to be that way, and it's ma'akiv. So therefore, li'akfu, why isn't it mi'akiv? Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan told Rabbi Asi, Amakra ulevesham, when he gets dressed, levisha ma'akeves, only the proper dress, the proper donning of the vestments is ma'akev, ve'ein davar acher ma'akev, but something else, like the tefillah of the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, is not ma'akev. So when Ravasi heard this, Tzavu Panav, his face shone. Amalei, so Rabbi Yochanan says, don't shine so much. Vav a'ufte kasvelach. I wrote a vav on a log. Now you try to write a vav on a log. A vav on a log gets all broken up and crinkly. So he says, I didn't give you such a good answer. Because ihachi, if that's the answer, then the tzafra nami. If only the wearing of the clothing is ma'akiv, then why, if you don't do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim in the morning, why is that ma'akiv? So Chizkiah answers, Amakra, v'hoisa lahem chak olam loy ulazaroi l'dayraisam. It should be for an everlasting statute for him and his descendants. So that which is ma'akiv by the descendants don't have to do 5 tefillas and 10 Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. They only have to do it in the morning. So davar ma'akiv b'zarai, that which invalidates by his descendants, that means the first Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim in the morning, ma'akiv bay, is ma'akiv for the Kohen Gadol. Davar she'eina ma'akiv b'zarai, that which is not ma'akiv for his descendants, eina ma'akiv bay. Rabbi Yonason says a different source. It says, "V'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron ubanav." Moshe, Aaron, and his children should wash from the laver, from the kier. Davar ma'akev b'banav. That means in the morning, ma'akev bay. Davar she'eina ma'akev b'banav, eina ma'akev bay. Now, Rabbi Yonason, who learns it out from v'rachatzu mimenu, why doesn't he learn it out? My time, the pasuk says, says, that's needed to tell me that there's such a mitzvah throughout the generations. That there's a mitzvah to be mekadosh yadayim raglayim throughout the generations. My time, why doesn't he learn it out from the pasuk of Moshe v'Aaron ubanav? That's coming to tell me a very interesting din. That the kier, in order for it to be effective, it has to have a minimum, enough water for 4 people. Because it says Moshe, Aaron, Ubanav. That's 4 people. Moshe, Aaron, and Aaron's 2 children. It says, well, yeah.
Did they heat up the water?
Did they heat up the water? No. Says the Gemara, Mebayle like Rabbi Yaisi Rabbi Chanina. The Amar Rabbi Yaisi Rabbi Chanina, Kol Kier she'ein by Kedei lekabesh arba kahana mimenu. Kier, if it didn't have enough to water for 4 kahanim, ein mekachin by. We don't do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim with it. Shenemar v'rachatzu mimenu Moshe v'Aaron ubanav. So it has to be enough for Moshe, Aaron, and his 2 children, Elazar and Isamar. Now, how did they do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim? So the Pashtus, as Gemara will say, is the Kohen bends down, he puts his right hand on his right foot, and his left hand on his left foot, and puts them under the faucet. The Kier had 12 faucets, as we'll see. That's the first opinion. Tanarabanan, Keitzad Mitzvahs Kiddush, what was the procedure of Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim? Maniach yodai emanis al gabi raglei emanis. He puts his right hand on his right foot. V'yodai asmoilus al gabi raglei asmoilus. He puts his left hand on his left foot. Or mekadesh. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you got to be acrobatic. I would have, if everybody could see, I would have Herschel demonstrate. But okay, so, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, maniach shtei yodav zu al gavzu. He puts his right hand on top of his left hand, and val gabe shtei raglov zu al gavzu. He puts his right foot on his left foot, then his right hand on his left hand on top of his right foot and left foot, and he does Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So the Gemara says, you know what would happen? Herschel will be on the floor. Says the Gemara, Amru lo hiflakta. You're asking for too much. Can't do that. What are you, a ballerina? Can't do that. Mark is saying he could do it. Says the Gemara, so Shaper Ka'amalei, Amar of Yosef v'chaveiroi misayai. No, it's talking about where Yitzi is putting a hand on Mark to steady him. He puts his hand on him and steadies him. He could do it.
Who turns on the key if they're all occupied, the hands and feet?
There are other Kanim there. Says the Gemara.
Kanim hold them up also.
Right. So the Gemara says.
Pour it on.
No, there's a faucet.
What's a faucet?
There's a faucet. We'll see. Says the Gemara, my beinayu. What's the difference? One says you can't do it that way. Question is if standing while supported is considered halachic standing. Amar Abaye, amida min hatzad ike beinayu. The question is if standing while being supported is considered standing. Amalei Rav Sama Breder Rav Ashi Ravina. What's the problem? Sit. Do it while sitting. Mark says, "What do you need? What's all the problem over here? I'll sit down. If I sit down, I can put my foot on one foot, my hand on the other hand. That's the problem." V'leisav meisav v'lekadish. Amakra. It says l'shares. It says l'kadesh l'shares. And Sheirus has to be standing. The Sheirus and Avoida needs Mu'amadu, right? It says Lamoid L'Shares. It has to be considered standing. So the question is, if being supported is considered standing. Says the Gemara now, as we're holding ready 2 dots, just moving along over here on a busy night. Tana Rabbanan. Tan Rabbanan, Kidesh Yada V'Raglav B'Yom. Okay, we have our Kohen, Mark. Mark is sanctified his hands and feet from the kiyah during the day, and then he's a masmid. He continues working through the night to be makdir the chalavim and the ivarim on the mizbeach, the fats and the limbs on the altar. Ein tzarich l'kadosh b'layla. He could go through the night without needing to go again and sanctify his hands and feet. But if he was mekadosh yadayim raglayim in the night, in other words, he came in the night shift and he's working in the night, tzarich l'kadosh b'yom. That's a new day, and in the morning he has to again sanctify his hands and feet. Divrei Rebbe. That's the opinion of Rebbe. Show you Rebbe. Aimer lina my elas b'kiddush yadayim raglayim. Being left overnight affects the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. So therefore, when it's left overnight, when it's left, here we have Irving back home, Mazel Tov Irving, so Rebbe holds that Lina, being left overnight, invalidates and necessitates another Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Aimer, Ein Lina Ma'elas B'Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. No, Lina overnight does not affect it. Tani Idach, we had another brayso. Yoyim and Makav Al Gabi Mizbech Kol Alayla. if he was working on the Mizbech the whole night, La'ora, the next morning, Ton Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, Divrei Rebbe. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Kevin Shekiddush Yadav Raglav Metchilas Avayda, once he started working, Afilu Mikan Vad Asara Yomim, even from now for 10 days, Ein Et Tzarech L'Kaddish. Now, of course, the Cheshik Shlomo over here says clearly, and this is obvious, that 10 days is a euphemism, is an exaggeration. Because you can't go 3 days without sleep. And once you sleep, you're of course going to have to do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. Even Herschel can't go more than 3 days without sleep, you know? And not only that, you can't go 3 days without urinating, moving your bowels. For sure not urinating, and then you would have to do it. So it doesn't mean literally, but it means that as long as you're doing the Avodah, you don't have to be Mekadosh Yadayim Raglayim. V'tzricha, but we need both statements. The Yashmin and Kamaisa, Behikama Rebbe said that once the new day comes and he's not doing the Avodah anymore, the Pasuk leit me Avodah la'Avodah, because there was an interruption. Aval Baha, but where Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said the second case, the loy pasak, where he's still occupied in Avodah, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon. Maybe he admits that if you're still doing non-stop Avodah, you don't have to do it. And if it says only the second case where he's still involved in Avodah, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon. Aval Baha, just because he's going from night to day, maybe Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon agrees that you do have to do it. Now, my time of the Rebbe. What's the reason of Rebbe that he says that the next morning you need to do a new Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim? D'chsiv begishtam. He says when you come near. In other words, each time you come near to do the Avodah, and for the new day, that's a new gisha, that's a new coming near to the Mizbeach, you have to do Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim. My time of Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon, d'chsiv b'vayam, only when you come into the Beis HaMikdash. But if you're still in the Beis HaMikdash, even for 10 days, you don't have to. V'idach nami ha'ksiv b'vayam. Oh, that's because iksiv begishtam, if it would say coming near, v'loiksiv b'vayam, I might think every time you come near, even in the same day. I'll call gisha. Every time you come near to the Mizbech, even on the same day, you need it. So therefore, kasser rachmanim b'vayam, which is usually from day to day. V'idach nami ha'ksiv begishtam, doesn't that imply that every morning when you come near, says Iksib b'vayam v'leiksiv begishtam, I might think when you come in, even if you don't do the Avodah, just for coming in you need it. Even just for coming in, you need to be Mekadosh Yadayim Raglayim. Says I can't be. Abir Ekanis Haksiv l'sharis, only when you come in to serve. Ela begishtam m'bayilei l'kid Rav Acha bar Yaakov. That comes to tell me another chiddush. The Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, we know that the Kohen does a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim when he changes, let's say he's changing from the golden vestments to the white vestments. He does a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim when he changes, then he's toivel, and then he does a Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim afterwards. The question is, does he do the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim the second time when he's dressed or before he gets dressed? Let's say he's changed from the gold to the white and he went into the mikveh. Does he do the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim before he puts on the white begadim or after he puts on the white begadim? So the Gemara tells us, the Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov Akol Moedim B'Kiddush Sheni, the second Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, Kishu Lovish Mekadosh. He does it after he gets dressed. He goes to the mikveh, gets dressed now, let's say, into the white garments, and then he does the second Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim, the Amakra Oy Begishtam, when he comes nigh, when he comes to do the Avodah. Only he does the Kiddush Yadayim Raglayim only when he's Mechusar Gisha, now coming to do the Avodah. Not when he's Mechusar Levisha V'Gisha. Misha and Mechusar El Gisha Bovad, if he would do it while he's undressed, then he would be mechusa levisha vigisha. Okay, we're just going to pause a moment to change the tape over here.